So hi there everyone, and welcome to this, my very first video guide to using the new version of Battlefield Portal that came with the new Battlefield 6 game. Now I know that some of you may well have already had experience of using Portal, but there may be new people who are just coming on board who have never touched Portal before, and those people may have found the new version of Battlefield Portal quite overwhelming, and even those who have had experience with Portal before may be wondering where to start with all of the new tools. Well, you're in the right place right now. In this brand new 4-part series, I'm going to guide you step by step through building your very own version of Domination. It's a classic mode and it's going to be powered by Portal's latest tools. You choose Domination because most people are familiar with it, and throughout the series we're going to explore some of the new exciting features in Battlefield Portal, including the use of the Spatial Editor, the new scripting system, as well as looking at the new custom user interface elements and also a custom scoreboard. So let's get ready, fire up Portal, and let's start building something awesome. So before we begin, we're going to want to make sure we've got the SDK that we need for developing our experience. To do that, just go to portal.battlefield.com, click the download SDK button and wait for the file to download. Once downloaded, you're going to want to extract the files and you will end up with a folder that contains a range of files and folders that you're going to use. And we are going to be using Godot, so we're just going to open Godot in our window. Once that's open, we are going to want to import the Portal project. You're going to find that in there, this Godot project. We're going to double click there and we are going to open the file called project. That will import Portal into Godot ready to use. It does take a moment sometimes, so we just have to wait for this to initialize. The final stage of this is that we need to click the Portal setup button, and this just makes sure that Godot is ready and able to work with Portal. You only need to do that Portal setup once, and once that's complete, you don't have to do it again. You can see that's just installing now, and it will be ready in a moment. And that's it, we are complete. Once you've done that, you're ready to start using Godot to make your spatial edits. So once that's complete, we're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping on the files to make our life easier as we build more and more experiences. And we're going to go into the file system just on this left-hand side, and we are going to expand the levels folder. Now, I have already done some housekeeping in my levels folder, and if I open up this base folder, you will probably see all of these files in that folder. I've organized mine into little test folder and official. Now, these are the templates for each of the maps, and you get a copy of each when Godot loads. We are going to be working on the capstone map. I'll show you that in a moment, but before we start making any edits to it, I am going to copy this particular item. Let's duplicate it and we are going to give it a name, so I'm going to call it Domination Experience, and then I am going to click OK, and that is going to create a copy of that file. Now this is important because we want to try avoiding editing the original copies. This way we can play with this to our heart's content, but still have the outlines of all the maps. Right, let's zoom out a little bit. Let's make sure that this is loaded. So we're going to double click on it to load, and that loads up this particular scene. And then we're going to zoom out a little bit. I'm just scrolling with the left mouse button, and you will see that this is the ready-made template for Capstone, or as it's known in the game itself, Iberian Peak. So you'll see now that this scene is loaded, it comes with a ton of predefined assets and nodes, and you'll see that these nodes are all grouped in separate sections. So everything is grouped inside this MP capstone node, and we can extend that, and we can see we've got the Team 1 HQ. That's all the items for the Team 1 HQ. Then for Team 2 HQ, we have the combat area, which is this blue area all around the edge, which is also editable. And we also have the terrain itself. So this is just that outer terrain, and these are the assets that are placed on it. We're going to want to keep those visible, but that's really just to act as a guide for where you need to place things. So let's get straight in and start making some edits. The first thing we're going to do is alter the combat area. We're going to choose an area of the map where our mod is going to take place. So for this mod, we're going to create a rather small combat area, and to do that, we can move these little node points, and just this is creating the outer wall, the outer edge of the level. We seem to have too many points just along here, so we're going to remove some of those. So we're going to go up into the inspector with the collision polygon 3D selected, and we can see these points just up here, and we are going to click the packed vector to array size, and we're just going to delete some of these nodes by clicking on the trash can, and you'll be able to see as I click on them, the nodes disappear from that side, and we're left really with these three. I think I've gone a little bit too far there, so I'm going to add another element, and you can see there. Let's decide where we're going to place this combat area for my demonstration. It's a little less important, but we'll set that so that the combat area is there. That seems okay. If you want to get a better look of where that is on the map, if you click on the perspective button at the top and then click top view, you're going to get kind of a top view of where this is played out. That looks good. Let's move on. So next, we're just going to move our HQs a little bit closer to the actual domination play area. So I'm just going to move the map around a little bit and zoom in to get a little bit closer. And we can see that these particular HQs are just here. Let's just zoom in a little bit. There you go. This is the item that we're looking for. Now, before I move this, we're just going to make one alteration. Placing items on the map, let's just give you an example. So we're going to open up the object library. This lists all of the items that you can place on the map. We're going to open up capstone, which is just there. And let's just take a ammo chest. Just drag it on the map like that. And you can see it's just appeared in mid-space. Actually, I've just lost it. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can still find it. There it is. So it's just hovering in space. We don't want that to happen. We want items to be placed on the ground. So we're just going to alter this terrain for a moment so that the things that we drop in the screen attached to the ground rather than in the air. So to do that, right click on the terrain item. We are going to click on editable children. We are going to right click on mesh, click on editable children. We're going to click on terrain. Then up there, up at the top where it says mesh, we are going to click create collision shape. And we are going to, from this collision shape and placement, click static body child. When I click create, it's going to take a moment, and then the screen is just going to change slightly. You can see it turn blue, and now we're not going to have this problem. Let's just double check that this works. We're going to delete the ammo chest, and we're going to drop something else on there. Let's see if we can find something a little bit bigger. Oh, it's not bigger, but you can see as I drag that along, it's now attached to the ground rather than mid-air. It's important when we get to the end of this that we remove these because we don't want these for Portal, but for editing it's very helpful if we want things to stick to the ground with ease. Right, let's move our barrel. Let's get rid of that because we don't need it. And let's move these HQs a little bit closer to where they need to be. So because everything is grouped together under a single node, when we select the top item just there, we can use these little arrows to move it around. You can see everything will move as a group. So we're going to move this a little bit closer. We'll check whether we've got it close enough in a moment. I'm going to do the same thing. We'll just double click on Team 2 HQ. It's going to take me over there. And we're just going to move that a little bit closer. I think this map area looks a little bit big to me, so we can make some edits later on. But the Team 2 HQ is now there. Let's just find the position for the Team 1 HQ. Let's push that a little bit closer. Let's actually push it inside the combat zone. That would make a little bit more sense, wouldn't it? Let's move that one inside the combat zone. Let's double check where everything is now by going back into the top view and click on the collision polygon. We've got our outer area just there. That's our combat area, and these are our HQs. I'm not entirely happy with that, so I'm going to draw this in a little bit further. Let's make this combat area a little bit smaller. Again, you can put it wherever you like. It doesn't really matter. Let's use this little area here as our map. I lost it then. Let's go like that. Push that in a little bit further. And again, let's push our HQs a little bit further into this area so they're kind of enclosed inside the combat area. And let's do the same thing with Team 2 HQ. So now let's check the position of these HQs and these spawners. And for your part, you're going to want to be a little bit more careful about where you place these because obviously you're designing your own level. But we can see that one of the HQs is just here. They look a little bit high in the sky, so we're just going to fix that. And the other HQ is just on this side. Let's lower these down so that the little spawn points are actually touching the ground. Looks a little bit out of place there, so I'm just scrolling around. I think we'll just probably move it to here. That makes a little bit more sense. So we'll just grab the team, is it Team 1 HQ? Let's just move these a little bit further over here. There you go, that looks a little bit better. So they are just on the edge there. We'll just leave those as they are. That will be fine for this. Let's go back over to the Team 2 HQ. Oh my word, they are definitely floating in the air. So let's move them a little bit further over here. Again, you might want to take a little bit more time over this and put them in the correct position. But there you go. We've got our 2 HQs set up, and we also have our combat area set up. So just a quick mention about these HQ nodes before we move on. These are predefined with every map. And you can see if we just expand that a little bit, it comes with a polygon volume item. That's this, which we can do the same with. We can expand and change it. And this defines the outer part of the HQ, so we can make it bigger or smaller, or we can add points the same way as we did before. And it also comes with 4 predefined spawn points. And these are positions where these players will spawn at if they spawn in the HQ. In actual fact, you can move these to wherever you like. So they click on the HQ area and then you can spawn them wherever they want to go. But for the sake of this mode, again, we will just leave them inside the HQ for now. And you've got 2 of them. You can also alter some other properties for the Team 2 HQ. And if we look over here, you can see that this HQ is for Team 2. And we've got the same there, that's for Team 1. We're not going to spend too much time looking at these because we're going to get straight on with our capture points. So let's do that now. And we're going to add a capture point to the map. And I think we will just add that capture point somewhere around here. So when we're adding items to the map, we are looking for files that end in .tscn. Those are the items that we can add to the map. And I'm going to just search or filter through the files for capture points. And if we know the items that we're looking for, that makes our life a little bit easier. And you can see straight away under Objects, Gameplay, Conquest, we have the capture points. I'm going to drag that onto the map and you'll see that it actually sticks to the ground rather than floating in the air. And that's one of the benefits to us having done what we did earlier, which is putting that mesh on the ground. It means the capture point is not floating in the air and we can place it wherever we like. Okay, so that's our capture point placed, and it's a really good idea to keep your nodes and your items organized. So we are going to rename this capture point A so that we know that that is the capture point that we've just placed, and we can give our other capture points once we place them other letters or even numbers if we want to. Anything that's written in here is really for our own reference and organization. It has nothing to do with the game engine, but obviously it will be really helpful to you if you know which objective or which capture point is which from your organizational point of view. Now, having placed the objective on the map, we're just going to turn our attention to the inspector over here. And we've got a number of options that we can set for the capture points. We're not going to go through all of these items on the list as it is just an introduction, but I will have a special mention for a couple of these items which are quite important. So we can toggle the capture points on and off in terms of whether it's enabled or not. And obviously, if we click to disable it, it will not be visible on the map, and then we can enable it. We're going to make sure that both of our HQs are enabled, and you can alter this through the code as well dynamically. It does have an initial owner. We are going to set this capture point to be neutral, so when the game starts, nobody will hold any of the capture points. But of course, if your game mode eventually involves having other teams, you can initially set the owner of a capture point to be a particular team. We're not going to bother about the flagpole size because at the moment it doesn't make any difference, but we are, and I'm just going to slow down a moment to focus on the object ID. Now, the object ID is a very important property because it is what allows us to connect the code in the scripting portal to this particular object in the portal editor or in the spatial editor. We also want to make sure that all object IDs are unique, and at the moment I do think we've used some other object IDs because they do come as default, so we need to check. So the Team 1 HQ has been given the object ID 1 and the Team 2 HQ has been given the object ID 2. And I think maybe for the capture points, maybe if we start from 100. So for our domination mode, we'll have object ID 100, 101 and 102. Makes it nice and easy for us to remember what the objective IDs were when we come to code. We're just going to leave all of these items as they are. We're not too worried about those for this, but we're also going to focus on these 3 things just at the bottom because these are also very, very important when setting up the capture points. We have the capture area, which we are going to do first in a moment, and then we have the spawn points for Team 1 and Team 2. Let's set up the capture area on the outside of this capture point. So a capture area is made up of a polygon volume item. And in order to add that to this item, make sure you have the capture point selected in the scene on the left hand side. And then we are going to right click and add a child node. Now the child node that we are looking for is a polygon volume. So we've got polygon, spell it right, polygon volume just there. Now obviously I've used it before so you can see it here, but we can find it also by searching, and then we are going to click create. Now the wonderful thing is if you had the capture point A selected, this has now been attached to that and we can move it wherever we want around the map. We can also make some alterations to the shape of this, so we can stretch out the collision point area if we want to make this larger or smaller or cover a bigger area or whatever we want. We can also do the same as we did for the combat area. We can click on the points in the polygon volume and we can add or remove more points as we need. So we've made this a little bit more of a complex area. Again, you might want to have a think about what shape you want for your particular capture points, and you can spend a little bit of time designing and thinking about where these might be positioned on the map. But for the sake of this video, that seems perfectly acceptable. There is one more and very important step to take with this particular outer polygon volume for this capture point, and this is very important because without it your capture points will not work, and we need to alter the height of the capture point. It looks like it's quite high, but by default the height is set to 0, and that will not trigger any action when somebody enters it because it's not going to detect them in the capture point. I'm going to set the height to 20. It's quite tall that actually, so let's just reduce that a little bit. It looks a bit out of place on the map. I think we can get away with maybe just 10. That's high enough. It's worth pointing out, by the way, this color is just what it looks like on the editor, so you can see what that looks like in the map. Right, that's our first capture point added. We're just going to add some spawn points because obviously what would a capture point be if it didn't have any spawn points? In fairness, in Domination, you don't necessarily need to have spawn points because in most versions of Domination, most players either spawn from their HQ or randomly around the map. But let's add some spawn points just so that we've got a complete picture of what's going on. And obviously then you can later adapt this to something like Conquest if you want to. So to add spawn points to the capture points, again, make sure you've got the capture point A selected because we want to make sure that these are nested inside. We are going to type spawn point, and there we go. We've got this entity just here. Make sure, by the way, that you're selecting the TSCN file, not the GLB or the GD. This is the little scene file that contains everything you need to know. And we are going to drag and drop that item directly onto the map. So that's our first spawn point. Let's add another one, and maybe one more as well. And we can position these and rotate them as we see fit. Right, I've just noticed that as we drag them onto the map, you'll notice that they did not get included in this little node collection for capture point A. I don't like that because we want to keep these all grouped together. So we're going to left click on the first spawn point. We're going to select all the items and we are going to drag them in so that they are grouped under capture point A. So again, we're just going to do a little bit of tidying up. Good practice in our collection of items here. You don't have to, but we will call this spawn point 1A. We'll call that one spawn point 2A. So I'm just double clicking and renaming. And we're going to call that one 3A and that one 4A. I'm not going to spend too long on that again for this video, but obviously calling these or giving these appropriate names is very helpful for organization later. So we've just got a couple more things to do before we finish this capture points completely. And with the scene on the left hand side, we select the capture point, or at least make sure it's got selected. We're just going to go back to the inspector for this capture point again, and we are going to assign the spawn points we just added to the map to this particular capture point. So we're going to click on the array spawn point just here next to team 1. We'll add 4 to it and we will click on assign, and let's assign each of these spawn points to team 1. Now obviously we can mix and match this up if we want to. We're just going to go straight down the line with each of these spawn points. We're not going to play around with it too much, and we're going to do the same for team 2 as well. We're going to assign the same 4 capture points to team 2, and they'll be enabled when that team owns that particular capture point. Let's go with 3. There we go. And that pretty much completes our single objective. So the wonderful thing is that now we have completed this first capture point or objective, we just need to duplicate this and make some small adjustments to get all of our additional capture points, which is what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to close up all of these nodes on the left hand side, so I've got a little bit more area to work with. And we are going to right click on this capture point and we are just going to click the duplicate button. You can see it's added an additional capture point. If I select the top node of the capture point and grab hold of this, you can see that we have an exact duplicate of the original. I hope you can see that clearly enough, and we can move that around. So I'm just going to move that to another position a little bit further out, just over here. Let's just move it to there. Let's make some little adjustments to it. So again, we will probably want to alter the capture area for this particular node. Let's go into the perspective view, and top down we can see that this is the area that we are working with. Let's go into the polygon volume for capture point A2. Let's alter the position of the outer area. Let's make this one a little bit smaller, maybe just like that. That one's a little bit neater, I think. We can go like that. Obviously, we can add or remove nodes if we want to. Let's move some of these spawn points into the actual objective area. And I think that we're nearly covered. There we go. And again, we're just going to rename these items so that they make a little bit more sense. That one is capture point B. We'll call that 1B, 2B, of course, 3B, and 4B. And then we're just going to check the capture points and make sure that we have all of the spawn points in the correct place, and the capture area, you can see that needs assigning again. So let's assign the new polygon volume for capture point B, and let's assign all of these spawn points. And we can see that those have actually stayed in place. So we got 1B and we have those ones there. So they've altered nicely. We just needed to set up the polygon. Let's do that one more time. I'm not going to do it on video. I'll just do that in a moment, and then I'll come back to you in a second. Okay, here we are back in the Spatial Editor again, and I've added an extra capture point. I'm going to be brutally honest, this is terrible map design, and you are going to want to think more carefully about this, but we have our 3 capture points. We have capture point A, which is just located there, B located there, and C in the middle with our 2 HQs on the edge. This is going to be a wild ride for anybody that wants to play this. And when you're designing your own capture points, you might want to think about where they go. So now that we've got all of our capture points created, before we just finish this whole process up, we must make sure that all of our capture points have a unique objective ID. And at the moment, capture point A has the ID 100. Let's have a look what B has. B has the ID 100 as well, which is no good. We want to make sure that they're all individual. So we're going to call this 101. Let's go to capture point C and see what the ID that has. Well, that's still 100 as well because we just duplicated it. Let's call that 102. It is very important for the coding that we're going to do next to make sure that each capture point has its own unique identifier. I'm going to do one final little piece of housekeeping. I want to group all of these under a single node so we can group all of the capture points together if we want to. And in order to do that, we're going to right click on this top level node just here. We're going to add a child node, and we are going to make this child node a node 3D. Select the node 3D, you can see that's there. And we are going to drag these 3 items inside there, so they're nested inside, and we're going to rename this node 3D capture points. And again, it's nothing to do with the editor, but it's really good practice to keep all of your work organized, and this will make sure everything is grouped together and easy to find. So one final thing that we're going to want to add to this map before we export it is something called a deploy cam. And the deploy camera is the actual camera that shows that top-down view of all of the objectives when you spawn in. That's going to be really helpful to make sure everything looks professional and is ready to go. So just over here on filtered files, we're going to type in deploy. I spelled that incorrectly, so deploy cam. And there we can see under gameplay command this deploy cam tscn. Just going to drag that onto the map. Now, in actual fact, we should be able to position the deploy cam quite nicely and get a different view of the map below, but at the moment it's slightly broken. So rather than spending too much time positioning the deploy cam right now, at the moment I think the only way to get this to work is to click on the transform just there and rotate it so that it is set at -90. So just basically so that it is pointing straight down. Let's just check that that's the case. Now, ultimately, you should be able to position this anywhere and you should be able to rotate it and get different views of the map, which would be really interesting because we could focus right down in on this particular objective. But at the moment, because the camera isn't working the way that it's intended, that's exactly what we're going to do. Just position it anywhere. It doesn't make any difference at the moment. So just as I was about to finish off this video, and this is how fast things are moving with Portal, very good friend of mine, Andy from Viper Studios, and I will put a link to his YouTube channel on the top right hand corner of the screen, got in touch with me and he said he had worked out how to add the capture points letters on top of the capture points, and also in the process, as part of that, we can also now outline the outside of the combat area. And I thought that it was worth just inserting that into this video now. So if you're watching this, this is an additional section that I've just added in the middle of this video, but I thought it was really worthwhile because it's really going to finish off this particular mode. So to do it, it's simpler than we actually thought, but this is how it's going to be with the new Portal. If we search in the file system for the sector item and we drag the sector item into the collection of items up here on the left in the scene, you are going to find that this now has some options in it that might help us set this up. I'm going to switch off the auto enable vehicles. I'm going to give this sector object ID. I'm going to call this 200. To be fair, we're not going to mess with any of this in this video. I thought I really wanted to get this in the video before I'd finished it and put it out. But you can see just down here, we can set up the sector area. Now, this is the important part if you want the combat area to be highlighted on your map. All we do is click on assign the sector area and we go and look at the combat area and assign the collision polygon 3D for the combat area to this outer sector area. It's not going to look like we've done much on the map, but trust me, that's going to be the finish for that combat area that you're going to need. In addition, we are going to add the capture points to this as well. For this sector, we can add our elements. And once we've added an element, we just add the capture point to it. So let's do this for the other two. Let's add capture point B, capture point C, just like that. And that's it. That's all we need to do. We will now, on the map, see each of those objectives within the sector will have been labeled with an icon A, B, and C, as you will now see in the replacement video at the start of this particular guide. And it will now show you the edge of the combat area on the outskirts, because this new sector addition highlights that on the map. Awesome. Thank you very much to Andy for helping me complete this guide. It was really frustrating. Right, let's get back on track and get back to the video as we stand. So now we're finally in a position to save the scene and export the data so that we can pass that over to the Portal web builder. But there's one final thing we need to do before we do that. And if you've been following this video all the way along, you will remember that right at the beginning, I said that we will need to remove these items from this static terrain before we export it. If you forget to do that, it's not the end of the world. You'll just have to come back in and do it and export it again. You'll get some kind of error telling you that the file size is too big in the Portal editor, and hopefully that will remind you to do this. But we're just going to remove these items so that we can export this safely. So the first thing is we are going to remove this collision shape 3D. We are then going to remove the static body because we can get rid of that now. And we're going to right click on mesh and we're going to click on editable children to get rid of that bit. We are going to right click on the terrain and editable children as well. I suspect there's probably a faster way of doing that, but that works. Now we're ready to save the scene and export it. Scene, save scene. The scene is saved, and let's export the current level. And once it's done, that gives us the JSON spatial data that we need to import into the Portal web builder. Right, see you in a minute. I'm just going to open up the Portal web builder and let's get this data in. So here we are once again back in the Portal web builder, and we are going to click on the create new experience button. We're going to go straight into Portal custom because after all that's what we're learning all about, and we're going to click start editing. We're not going to mess around with any of the mutators, but it's worth bearing in mind for your mod you can of course alter whatever mutators you want. There's a ton of options in there. This is not the video for that. We're going to go straight into map rotation. So the map that we want is Liberation Peak. I know that in the editor we selected Capstone, but that is actually Liberation Peak. And we are going to upload the spatial data that we saved, and it is this one, this Domination Experience New Spatial Data, and that is uploaded and ready to go. We're just going to go into modifiers for a moment, and under gameplay, just down here, we are going to select the default custom 2 teams scoreboard. We'll come back to that later on in another video just very soon. We're going to set up the scoreboard, but we are going to go straight into the rules editor from there. So here we are in the rules editor, and we are not going to use the blocks for this experience. We're going to explore the new script editor. But for anybody that is new to Portal and hasn't used the blocks before, anything that is driven in the game, anything that happens in the game is triggered by a rule, and that rule has an event attached. And you can see there are all kinds of events that can trigger things. So for example, when somebody joins the game, or when somebody enters a capture point, that might be important, or when somebody exits a capture point. So these are the kind of things that we want to trigger. We're just going to, in this video, enable the capture points, and we're going to go into the script editor to be able to do that. So in the script editor, you've got 2 options on the left-hand side. You can create a new script file or a strings file. We're not going to do the strings file today. We're just going to click on the script, and we can start typing straight away into the script editor. And of course, if you don't want to do any of the programming, I'm just going to provide the template for you. But part of this whole experience is learning how to write the scripts, and it's really good practice to type them out yourself, because once you've done it once, it sticks in your mind a little bit more. So let's write this first function, or this first event that we want to happen in Portal right here. So export async function on game mode started. It's like that. Open and close a bracket and put a curly brace just there. Well done, you've just written the header for your first function. Right, the first thing we need to do is get the capture points that we want to enable and set up. So we're going to take advantage of the power of JavaScript or TypeScript by typing let capture point a equal, and we're going to use the command mod.get capture point. And then in the brackets, we are going to put the object ID of that particular objective that we saved in the spatial editor. And if you remember what that was 100. And I've just spotted a spelling mistake there, which is a mod there. So we are going to get the capture point with the ID of 100, and we are going to save that in the variable called capture point A. The next step is to make the modifications to it to enable it, and there are a number of functions available to us to enable and modify capture points. We'll run through those now. We've got mod dot, and you'll notice that as I type in the commands, this wonderful online editor actually helps me along by giving me all the commands that are available. And sometimes if you forget the command, it may well be just listed straight away there on the list. And the one that I'm looking for is enable capture point deploying. I think that's the one I want. And if we click tab on the keyboard, it just auto fills that in for us. So we're going to enable capture point deploying on capture point A, and we need to set that to true. So that is the command to enable capture point deploying. Let's run through all of the others. Mod.enable game mode objective enables it, shows it on the screen. In fairness, we set it to enabled already in the editor. What I was doing there. We set it to enabled already in the editor, but this is just to make sure that it is enabled as it should be. Let's move on to the next line. Then we're going to set the capturing time. So mod.set. Let's have a look, see if we can see it on there. We can't quite see it yet. So set capture point. There we go. Set capture point capturing time. We have to pass what the capture point is, capture point A. We're going to set it to, well, let's set it to 10. That's how long it takes to capture. So the next one we want, mod dot set capture point neutralization time. Set it on capture point A and set that also to 10 seconds. And then last but not least, mod dot set max capture point multiplier. We have to say we want to set it for capture point A, which was where we saved it in that variable, and we will just set that to 1 for the sake of argument. So it's at that point we're going to stop and we're going to just test and check out our work in game. So we're just going to save our experience by clicking save. We're going to give it an appropriate name, so we'll call this one Domination Part 1, and we are going to click the Create New button. It's just worth remembering, by the way, that you don't actually have to publish your experience to be able to play and test it. Publishing really just exposes it to the entire world. That's perhaps not what we want to do at this stage. So let's jump over into the game, have a look at what we've achieved so far, have a little recap, and talk about the next steps. So here we are in the game. I've gone down to Community and My Experiences. We're just going to load up the experience we just saved. That was Domination Part 1. Let's host it locally. This is going to get the server booted up significantly quicker than if we hosted online. So I've just scrolled down to My Experiences. We're just going to open that up, and we are going to load the Domination Part 1 that we have just saved. I'm going to host this locally, and the map is just going to load up. We're going to host it locally because it's much quicker for testing. Hopefully this won't take very long. And once it's loaded up, we're going to be presented with the minimap. There we go. You can see that this is the minimap. We're just going to zoom out a little bit so we can get a good look at what we've done. Got the HQ over here for one team, HQ over here for the other. We're just going to click there and spawn in, and if we just spin around, we should see there is our objective B, C and A nicely highlighted. Just check the outer bounds that we can just see on the minimap just down there, working perfectly nicely. And we actually only enabled one objective. You'll notice that for the ones that we didn't write the scripts yet, they have not been enabled. Lovely music, by the way. And we are just going to go over to objective A. You'll notice that because we actually enabled that one and set the timer, that objective will now trigger and allow us to capture it. And actually, once it's complete, we will get the XP. We'll just wait for that to happen on the map. You can see it above me. So that is it for part 1. We have completed the first part of this, and we're well on our way to completing this particular game mode. We are going to move on in the next video to turning this into a somewhat playable game, and we're going to add quite a lot of scripting to this mode to make it workable. If you are waiting for the next tutorial or guide and you haven't subscribed already, please do. These things take quite a long time to put together, and also I do like to take these things slowly so you get a lot of detail and you find them easy to follow. I hope this has been alright for you, and I hope you found it useful. Please let me know in the comments if you've enjoyed it, found it useful, and you're looking forward to the next thing, or if there's anything else you'd like to know, please do get in touch. As for now, we'll wait for the next video, and I'll see you then. Bye.